He rushed back to the dungeon, retrieved the man-eating flower seeds still chewing on corpses back into his pouch, then set out with Venerable Lianjing, heading straight for the Myriad Tribulation's holy temple. Not long after, the two arrived deep within the mountain range, where the Myriad Tribulation's holy temple was located. They saw a thick beam of lightning shooting from the ground straight into the clouds, connecting heaven and earth, lingering without fading. Within that lightning, faintly flickered strange and profound characters, flowing ceaselessly. This was precisely the heavenly phenomenon triggered when Fang Chen completed the 6 branches of heavenly thunder. The source of the lightning was none other than a massive conical boulder planted in the ground. The boulder was rough and crude, its surface teeming with dense 9-colored thunderbolts. These thunderbolts seemed sentient, firmly guarding the boulder and exuding an oppressive aura that forbade approach. Not far away, Venerable Mind Demon stood there, panting heavily. His robes were charred and tattered, and even his eyebrows and beard were mostly burned away. His exposed skin was red and swollen from burns, cutting a truly sorry figure. Venerable Mind Demon wiped the soot from his face and said angrily, as the acknowledged number 1 lightning cultivator in the entire Taking Grand State, to be injured like this by a mere thunder formation. After waiting in vain for Fang Chen, he repeatedly tried to force his way closer to that boulder, seeking to unravel the secret of the legacy treasure left by the founding patriarch of the Myriad Tribulation's holy temple. His original intention was to find a defensive magic treasure for the Myriad Tribulation's holy temple, one capable of withstanding the ancient giants. Unfortunately, after all that struggle, it was destined to be futile. If this secret could be unraveled so easily, how could all the previous venerables of the Myriad Tribulation's holy temple have done nothing about it? In the end, only one who has cultivated the 6 branches of heavenly thunder to completion would have a chance to open it. At this thought, Venerable Mind Demon could no longer contain his temper and barked irritably, "Why hasn't that brat arrived yet?" Speaking of which, it was truly embarrassing. The sect-shaking supreme technique of the Myriad Tribulation's holy temple, the 6 branches of heavenly thunder, was ultimately cultivated to completion by an outsider. Now he had to turn around and beg that person. Nearby, Perfected Qionglu could not help but smile bitterly. No news yet. Just then, the transmission jade pendant in his robes suddenly lit up. Perfected Qionglu hurriedly received the message within, and his face immediately showed joy. They've arrived. I just got word. Fang Chen has graced our Myriad Tribulation's holy temple with his presence. Venerable Mind Demon, upon hearing this, was first delighted, then his gaze shifted and he snorted coldly, "Good lad, an outsider has cultivated our Myriad Tribulation's holy temple's forbidden techniques in their entirety. Today he must give me an explanation." Perfected Qionglu understood in his heart that the Venerable did not truly intend to make things difficult for Fang Chen over the technique. Otherwise, he would have personally armed the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion long ago. He was planning to first put Fang Chen in his place. That way, when he later asked Fang Chen to cooperate in unlocking the mystery of the stone spire, things would go much more smoothly. Perfected Qionglu hesitated for a moment, then quietly reminded, "Venerable, Fang Chen is accompanied by a female companion, who also has a divine halo suspended behind her head. According to the reporting disciples, it is highly likely that she is also a divinity transformation, Venerable." The reporting disciples did not dare to brazenly scrutinize Venerable Lianjing's divine halo, so the message was only a rough report. Venerable Mind Demon was slightly surprised, but did not take it too seriously. This is the Myriad Tribulation's holy temple, his territory. Whoever it is, once they're here, they'd better behave themselves. With a fierce sweep of his sleeve, his figure blurred instantly, and he said coldly, "Who cares who it is? I'm asking Fang Chen for an explanation. Would she dare to interfere?" Perfected Qionglu thought that made sense. Given Venerable Mind Demon's fiery temper, he would hardly give much face to cultivators of the same rank. In the blink of an eye, the two flashed and landed before the main transmission hall. As soon as they stood firm, Venerable Mind Demon heard a few words that made his blood pressure soar instantly. "Deputy Pavilion Master Fang, you've finally come. I also want to do a credit deal with you. I've prepared my precious female disciple as collateral. Rest assured, she's definitely beautiful." "Department Chief Zhao, you are disgracing the backbone of our Myriad Tribulation's holy temple. How can you use your own female disciples to settle debts? I'm different. I'll use my wife." Chattering all around, a crowd of department chiefs and elders surrounded the transmission portal so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Venerable Mind Demon was immediately so angry that he laughed. These bastards. Ever since they heard that Song Ling Yu's disciple, Hua Wang, after working off debts at the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion for 3 months, not only suffered no hardship but instead gained a heaven-sent fortune, each one got crooked ideas and scrambled to send their female disciples to Fang Chen. Even more outrageous, someone actually wanted to use his wife as bait. This is simply outrageous. They may have no shame, but the Myriad Tribulation's holy temple still has its old face to save. Venerable Mind Demon, with a dark face, bellowed, "What are you all doing?" The gathered department chiefs and elders trembled all over, then reluctantly dispersed. Venerable Mind Demon glared at them and scolded, "Look at yourselves, aren't you ashamed? Using female disciples to settle debts is one thing, but actually using one's own wife. Have you no face at all?" Having said this, with a black face, his gaze swept past the crowd and fiercely glared at Fang Chen. The meaning was clear. Look at the good things you've done. Unexpectedly, Fang Chen's expression was even darker than his. Fang Chen coldly glared back and said, "Venerable Mind Demon, you blame me instead. Your Myriad Tribulation's holy temple people run up credit with me, and you still want me to help raise your disciples. I am generous and don't quibble with you, yet you have the nerve to blame me." Venerable Mind Demon was originally quite angry, but after hearing these words, he couldn't help but rub his nose, feeling a bit guilty inside. In that matter of Hua Wang, Fang Chen truly took a bloody loss. He coughed twice, put on the posture of an elder, forced a smile, and said, "Cough, cough, young man, suffering loss is a blessing. Didn't you also learn our Myriad Tribulations, holy temples, 6 branches of heavenly thunder? Let's consider that even." Fang Chen rolled his eyes at him, too lazy to argue further. He got straight to the point and asked, "You've invited me here time and again. What is the matter?" Venerable Mind Demon no longer hid anything, and with burning gaze sized up Fang Chen. "You have indeed achieved the unification of the 6 branches." Fang Chen nodded slightly, but inwardly mused. Could today's matter be related to the unification of the 6 branches? Hearing it confirmed personally, Venerable Mind Demon's heart was momentarily filled with mixed emotions. There was envy, excitement, and even deeper emotion. He sighed heavily. Over 1,000 years. Finally, someone has again achieved the unification of the 6 branches. To witness it with my own eyes in this lifetime, I have resolved a lingering regret. I earnestly request friend Fang not to begrudge this technique and teach us the yin, yang heaven. I am willing to offer a thunder force in return. Saying this, he took out a fist-sized stone. Inside the stone, thunder surged, filled with vast thunder power. This power was enough to allow a thunder path cultivator to cultivate any one of the 6 branches to perfection. However, compared to the Thunder Mountain possessed by Venerable Mind Sin or the Venerable of the Heavenly Man's 2 decays from the young Emperor Mountain who once ambushed Fang Hen, this one was much smaller. This bit of thunder was far from enough to fill the heavenly abyss heart to the brim. Fang Chen was not particularly disappointed. He had already planned to return the yin-yang heaven to the Myriad Tribulation's holy temple on this trip. To additionally acquire such a mass of thunder power was already an unexpected delight. He immediately took out the jade slip engraved with yin-yang heaven and casually tossed it over. Venerable Mind Demon was overjoyed, and with clasped hands, he solemnly bowed deeply. The great kindness of friend Fang, the entire Myriad Tribulation's holy temple will never forget, even when our teeth fall out in old age. The hall master, the academy head, the 6 department chiefs, and others near, by all expressed their thanks in unison, full of gratitude. The missing yin-yang heaven had been their regret for hundreds of years. Today it was finally recovered. This was a moment worthy of being recorded in the sect's annals. Fang Chen put away the thunder power, returned the bow, and said, "You need not thank me. Thanks to the permission of the Myriad Tribulation's holy temple, since cultivating the 6 branches of heavenly thunder, I have benefited greatly. Returning the yin-yang heaven can be considered my token of gratitude. In that case, I shall take my leave." Wait. Venerable Mind Demon's smile vanished as he hurriedly called out, "I still have one request." "Oh?" Fang Chen could not help but be somewhat surprised. He had originally thought that the Myriad Tribulation's holy temple had repeatedly invited him solely for the yin-yang heaven. It seemed there was another reason. "Please speak, Venerable." Venerable Mind Demon raised his hand and pointed to the distant sky. "Piercing lightning beam, friend Fang. Have you noticed that thunder beam?" Fang Chen gazed over and nodded slightly. Naturally, I have. What guidance does venerable mind demon have? That bolt of lightning was blinding, linking heaven and earth, and within it, mysterious runes flickered dimly. He had sensed it the moment he stepped out of the teleportation hall. Only because this thing might be a paramount treasure of the myriad tribulations, sacred hall, did he harbor scruples and pretend not to see it. Heart Demon Venerable said meaningfully, "It's good that you saw it. It has been waiting for you all along." Fang Chen raised an eyebrow slightly. "Waiting for me? What do you mean by that?" Heart Demon Venerable sighed with emotion and said, "The moment you completed the perfection of the 6 scrolls, the legacy, sacred relic of our myriad tribulations, sacred hall, reached Ted and shot forth this bolt of lightning. It was guiding you to come. Unfortunately, you then left the take in Great Continent and only returned today. A legacy sacred relic." Fang Chen was secretly alarmed. As one of the 3 divine sects, wouldn't the myriad tribulations sacred hall's legacy sacred relic be a sect, suppressing divine object, just like the evil crow jade seal of the Great Yin sect? But why would this object react to the heavenly thunder 6 scrolls? Heart Demon Venerable saw his confusion and explained, the cultivation art of the heavenly thunder 6 scrolls fell out of that sacred relic. Fang Chen was instantly stunned. What kind of sacred relic could produce a cultivation art that, once the 6 scrolls are united, can rival a heaven-grade technique? Its origin might even be comparable to that primordial void ancient tree from which the grand derivation sword array fell. Fang Chen's expression turned solemn as he asked, "Venerable, why did you invite me here?" He pondered inwardly. Since this is the sacred relic of the myriad tribulations, sacred hall, there's absolutely no reason to share it with an outsider, right? Heart Demon Venerable, however, let out a helpless sigh and said, "Follow me." Fang Chen nodded and subtly glanced at the air beside him out of the corner of his eye. Before coming, Fang Chen had already been cautious and had secretly asked Venerable Lianjing to follow him in concealment. At this moment, both of them had activated the Silence Zen, communicating silently only through their minds. Fang Chen asked in his mind, "Godmother, do you know anything about the myriad tribulations, sacred halls, sacred relic?" Soon, Venerable Lianjing's voice echoed in his mind, "I've heard some things. The myriad tribulations, sacred hall's ability to become the only respectable thunder path sect outside of the young Emperor Mountain lies in a mysterious stone from beyond the heave. Ends, the thunder power contained in that stone even makes the young Emperor Mountain covet it. It's only because it's a divine sect of the Taking Great Continent, under the protection of the Grand Libationer, that the young Emperor Mountain has not forcibly taken it. If it were in the heavenly continent, it would have long been lost." Fang Chen was secretly alarmed. The venerables of the young Emperor Mountain, even the Heart Grudge Venerable, who does not cultivate the Thunder Path, each possess a terrifyingly powerful Thunder Mountain. The thunder power contained within the young Emperor Mountain has absolutely reached an unimaginable level. Yet even they drool over the myriad tribulations sacred hall's sacred relic, which shows that the thunder power within this relic is likewise immense to the extreme. A glint flickered in his eyes as he silently calculated, in that case, wouldn't there be a chance to fill the heavenly abyss heart? However, Venerable Lianjing's tone shifted, and she said hesitantly, "But I have heard some unfavorable rumors. This sacred relic might not be auspicious." Fang Chen's heart trembled slightly, and he quickly asked, "Godmother, why do you say that?" The myriad tribulations sacred hall used this relic to achieve its current status as one of the 3 divine sects. How can it be inauspicious instead? Venerable Lianjing sighed softly. "You are not the first person in history to achieve perfection in the heavenly Thunder 6 scrolls. You are merely the first in 1,000 years. Before you, there were indeed others who accomplished it." Fang Chen deeply agreed with this. The myriad tribulations sacred hall has a long history with generations of geniuses emerging. Before the yin-yang heaven was lost, there must have been people who achieved perfection. Fang Chen asked in confusion, and then, "Isn't it a good thing when someone achieves perfection?" Venerable Lianjing's voice suddenly grew several degrees heavier. However, not long after they achieved perfection, they all disappeared. There is no longer any trace of them in the world. Fang Chen's pupils sharply contracted as he pressed. "Disappeared? What do you mean?" Venerable Lianjing said in a deep voice, "No one knows the exact reason, but throughout the history of the myriad tribulations sacred hall, those who perfected the 6 scrolls even truly vanish into the river of time. The problem most likely lies with that sacred relic." As if a heavy hammer had struck his chest, Fang Chen abruptly looked toward that incomparably brilliant lightning beam, and a chill rose from his spine, making his hair stand on end. Just now, Heart Demon Venerable had said, this bolt of lightning had been waiting for him all along. What Venerable Lianjing said was by no means groundless. The disappearances of those who perfected the 6 scrolls might very well all be related to this sacred relic. Fang Chen abruptly stopped in his tracks, his scalp tingling. These objects from beyond the heavens, why are they each more sinister than the last? First, there was the calamity, relieving Black Lotus, then the strange profound ice, and now there's this sacred relic of the myriad tribulations, Sacred Hall. Heart Demon Venerable noticed his abnormal behavior and turned back to ask what's wrong. Fang Chen pondered briefly and then asked, Venerable, I have something I'd like to inquire about. How exactly was your sect's yin, young heaven lost? Heart Demon Venerable was slightly surprised, and after careful recollection, he replied, the specifics are not recorded in detail in the sect's scriptures. There are only some vague records stating that it was lost by a previous generation's venerable. That senior, after 10 years of seclusion, suddenly said he needed to go out, and when he left, he took the jade slip inscribed with the 6 scrolls. By the time he returned, he claimed that the yin, young heaven, had been lost. Since then, no one has cultivated this scroll for over 100 years, its contents irretrievable, and thus it was lost. Why do you suddenly ask about this, fellow Taoist Fang? 10 years of seclusion, and it was suddenly lost. A dignified divinity transformation venerable, with sensing ability so powerful, how could he easily lose an object? The look in Fang Chen's eyes as he gazed at that lightning grew increasingly wary. He instantly understood that the yin-yang heaven was probably not lost. Rather, the previous generation's venerable had vaguely sensed the danger lurking behind the perfection of the 6 scrolls. Therefore, he deliberately destroyed one of the scrolls so that the Heavenly Thunder 6 scrolls could never be perfected, thereby eliminating the calamitous aftermath. Yet Fang Chen, in complete ignorance, had cultivated all 6 scrolls to perfection, and now he was even brought before the sacred relic. How could he still dare to advance? He immediately made a decision, cupped his hands, and said, Venerable, please forgive me, but I cannot approach this sacred relic. Filling the heavenly abyss heart is certainly important, but with the great tribulation approaching, risking disappearance for this is definitely not a rational act. Heart Demon Venerable was utterly perplexed. They were already at the sacred relic. Why had Fang Chen suddenly turned back? He snorted in dissatisfaction. Fellow Taoist Fang, are you afraid I'm scheming against you? If I had such intentions, I would have long ago learned from that bodhisattva and forcibly abducted you to my myriad tribulations' sacred hall. Fang Chen cupped his hands in salute and explained, Venerable, you misunderstand. I am not worried about you, but about the sacred relic itself. Heart Demon Venerable's expression eased somewhat, and he said in confusion, it's nothing more than a mysterious giant boulder. I originally intended to ask you to unravel its mysteries, so that we might know what it truly is, and how to harness the thunder power it contains. Hearing this, Fang Chen's expression grew even more grave. He retorted, Venerable, don't you find it strange? Throughout your sect's history, those predecessors who perfected the 6 scrolls, why were they unable to unravel this mystery? This Heart Demon Venerable was momentarily rendered speechless. Fang Chen then proceeded to recount his speculation with Venerable Lianjing in detail to Heart Demon Venerable. After hearing it, Heart Demon Venerable could not help but be horrified and changed expression. Are you saying that perfecting the Heavenly Thunder 6 scrolls is itself a trap? Fang Chen nodded slowly. Although it can't be completely confirmed, it is very likely. Heart Demon Venerable's pupils suddenly contracted, and he blurted out, how could that be? Our last predecessor, who perfected the Heavenly Thunder 6 scrolls. Halfway through his words, he suddenly choked, as if he had abruptly realized something. His expression changed drastically several times, and then he looked toward that lightning, a hint of terror appearing in his eyes. And he even staggered backward several steps. Fang Chen asked in confusion, Venerable, what's the matter? Heart Demon Venerable's lips trembled slightly, fear surfacing in his eyes. I can't recall. The name of the last predecessor who cultivated the Heavenly Thunder 6 scrolls. Not just him, but I can't clearly remember any of the past individuals who cultivated it to perfection. Those who could perfect the Heavenly Thunder 6 scrolls were all without exception past generation divinity transformation venerables, each a major figure of the myriad tribulations' sacred hall. As a contemporary venerable, he must pay respects to his predecessors every few years. How could he possibly forget their names? But now he realized with alarm that, at some point unknown, he had completely forgotten their names. At these words, Palace Lord Qionglu Shangren, the dean, and all the assembled elders wore expressions of shock. They hurriedly concentrated and tried to recall, and one after another, their faces all drastically paled. "I've forgotten too," one elder cried out in alarm. "I can't remember anything at all." "This isn't right. I can't recall a single one." Palace Lord Kyunglu Shangren suddenly realized something, quickly retrieved a thick volume from his storage tool, and said, "Wait, I have the roster of past generations' predecessors here with their life records. Our Myriad Tribulations Sacred Hall has had 30 venerables throughout its history, each one clearly documented." Yet he suddenly froze in place, staring at the table of contents and sinking into bewilderment. The crowd looked over, and their scalps instantly went numb. Out of those 30 entries, 6 had turned completely blank. And when they frantically flipped to the corresponding pages, the pages that should have been filled with writing were also completely blank. Fang Chen drew a sharp breath, secretly sending a voice transmission to Venerable Lianjing. "Godmother, did you see? Those who perfected the 6 departments, not only were their names forgotten, but even the historical records have turned blank. This exceeds mere memory deletion, doesn't it?" However, an even more hair-raising scene greeted Fang Chen. After a moment of silence, Venerable Lianjing actually asked back in an odd tone what disappeared ones who perfected the 6 departments. Fang Chen froze in shock and blurted, "Didn't Godmother just say yourself that those who perfected the 6 departments all vanished later?" Venerable Lianjing gave a light scoff. "How much cheap wine did you drink to spout such nonsense? When did I ever say such words?" A chill ran through Fang Chen's heart. Venerable Lianjing's memory had also been tampered with. She had even forgotten what she herself had said just moments before. She was a great venerable whose cultivation had already reached the 5 declines of heaven and man. Fang Chen felt all the hairs on his body stand on end. He swiftly turned to Venerable Zinmo and urgently said, "Venerable, the sacred relic is listening to our conversation. It is altering our memories." Venerable Zinmo's expression had somehow returned to calm. Hearing this, he looked at Fang Chen with a strange expression. "What are you talking about? What memories of mine have been changed?" Kyunglu Shangren, the dean, and the heads of the 6 departments also looked at Fang Chen with puzzled faces. Fang Chen felt his scalp explode. He sucked in a sharp breath, snatched the roster from Kyunglu Shangren's hands, and exclaimed loudly, "See for yourselves. Your past venerables, 6 of them, are completely missing." Venerable Zinmo looked at him oddly. "Missing? Are there not 24? Fang Chen hastily looked at the roster, and his pupils suddenly contracted violently. The erased blank entries and their related pages had at this moment all been restored to their original state. Those vanished traces seemed as if they had never existed. The 6 predecessors of Myriad Tribulations, Sacred Hall, who had cultivated the Heavenly Thunder 6 departments to perfection, not only had memories of them been deleted, but even very traces of their existence in the world had been eerily erased completely. Moreover, it was done just now, right before his very eyes, forcefully erased. In this world, apart from Fang Chen, no one remembered they had ever existed. Even more terrifying was that all this had occurred right in front of him. Venerable Lianjing examined him with a worried look and asked softly, "Fang Chen, are you all right? Why are you acting so strangely all of a sudden?" Fang Chen opened his mouth, but had no way to explain. Those 6, even the traces in historical records, had been forcibly erased. Who would believe him if he spoke of it? He took a deep breath and forced a smile. "I'm fine, Godmother." Venerable Lianjing gave a slight nod. "Then let's hurry over. The sacred relic of Myriad Tribulations' Sacred Hall is no ordinary thing." Fang Chen forced himself to appear calm and shook his head. "Godmother, I don't want to go." What need was there to ask who or what was the culprit that erased those 6's traces? It was precisely that sacred relic. It sensed that it had been exposed, and so, on the spot, it changed everything. This method was simply terrifying beyond measure. Even if it contained heaven, reaching opportunities, Fang Chen no longer wished to approach it even half a step. Venerable Lianjing was momentarily taken aback, somewhat puzzled as to why Fang Chen suddenly changed his mind. But still, she immediately nodded in support without hesitation. "All right, whatever you say." Venerable Zinmo hurriedly tried to retain him. "Fellow Taoist Fang, the sacred relic is still waiting for you to unravel its mysteries." Fang Chen cut him off in a deep voice. "Venerable, stop thinking about unraveling the sacred relic's mysteries. It is by no means benevolent." Having said his piece, Fang Chen looked at Venerable Lianjing and said urgently, "Godmother, let us leave swiftly. Do not linger here a moment longer." Venerable Lianjing sensed the urgency in Fang Chen's tone. Though she didn't understand the reason, she still chose to trust him unconditionally. She placed a hand on Fang Chen's shoulder, about to teleport away with him. But at that very moment, a sudden change occurred. The thunderbolt that connected heaven and earth suddenly exploded in the sky, transforming into countless blinding bolts of lightning. They frantically gathered above Myriad Tribulation's sacred hall, and in the blink of an eye, they condensed into a sky-bailing, vast myriad-acre lightning pool. This sight drew cries of shock and terror from the crowd at Myriad Tribulation's sacred hall. It was the first time they had seen the sacred relic react in such a way. But Fang Chen's pupils sharply contracted. He was all too familiar with that myriad-acre lightning pool. This was precisely the world-ending vision that would manifest only when one cultivated the heavenly thunder 6 departments to perfection and united the 6 into one. Indeed, the vast lightning pool centered on Fang Chen and came crashing down with a deafening roar. A boundless sea of thunder swirled around him, madly condensing, and in but an instant formed a thunder giant towering 10 zhang high. The giant had a yin-yang diagram hovering above its head, eyes brimming with leaping lightning arcs, a 5-colored lightning heart embedded in its chest, a giant sword of light. Ji gripped in its hand a golden lotus underfoot and winged dragons coiling around its back. Even more, a divine ring halo of the nascent soul stage levitated behind its head. The 6 departments' unity has been forcibly activated. Fang Chen immediately felt a sense of peril and shouted, "Godmother." But before Venerable Lianjing could react, the 10 zhang thunder giant enveloped Fang Chen and vanished on the spot. When he reappeared, Fang Chen found himself standing before an enormous, ancient stone spire. The entire body of the stone spire was laced with destructive 9-colored lightning. Even without thinking, Fang Chen instantly guessed that this was the sacred relic of Myriad Tribulation's sacred hall. Fang Chen's heart leapt into his throat. This sacred relic was definitely alive. The thunder giant did not stop. It took a mighty stride, carrying Fang Chen straight toward the stone spire. Fang Chen struggled fiercely, but it was like an ant trying to shake a tree. Everything was in vain. Who could have imagined that reaching the end of the heavenly thunder 6 departments cultivation would be a shackle that subjected one to another's control? This was also why none of those predecessors who had perfected the heavenly thunder 6 departments could escape their doom. He closed his eyes, bracing for the intense pain of crashing into the stone spire. But to his surprise, at the instant of impact, a twisted spatial force burst forth from around the stone spire, directly sucking him inside. In an instant, a shattered space spread out before his eyes. The sky, which should have been clear and azure, was now a murky gray, riddled with hideous cracks in several places, and even worse, several pitch-black gaping holes had been torn open. Upon the earth, fierce flames burned violently, roiling with thick smoke and tongues of fire. The ground was strewn with innumerable corpses, lying every which way. The corpses were extremely peculiar, all clad in white and gold battle armor, their entire bodies emanating a holy aura. What drew the eye most was that on their backs, they all bore snow-white wings. This scene was all too familiar to Fang Chen. In the fragmented memories of Huaxin, there had once appeared a mysterious being with 9 pairs of wings. And they were precisely the original inhabitants of the heavenly realm, the Angel Clan. Fang Chen's mind rumbled thunderously inside the sacred relic of Myriad Tribulation's sacred hall. There was hidden a fragment of an ancient battlefield space. And moreover, the scene of a great war of the Angel Clan. Every venerable of Myriad Tribulation's sacred hall across the ages probably never dreamed that their sacred relic, said to come from beyond the heavens, was actually a battlefield ruin. Gunpowder smoke filled the air, and the killing intent had not yet dissipated. Fang Chen, filled with awe, scanned his surroundings and suddenly glimpsed a towering stone tablet that pierced the clouds, standing deep within the surging smoke. The thunder giant controlled his body, walking straight toward the stone tablet. The closer they got to the tablet, the denser the Angel Clan corpses along the way became, and their wings grew increasingly numerous, indicating more and more terrifying strength. Could it be that the Angel Clan fought this war precisely over that stone tablet? Fang Chen's thoughts raced. Escorted by the thunder giant, he arrived before the stone tablet. It was a gleaming 100 zhang tablet that radiated a holy, faint luminescence. Its material was impossible to determine, but the spiritual pressure it emitted surpassed anything Fang Chen had ever seen in the world, including the so-called realm artifact, the Hell Execution Brush. Before the stone tablet, corpses piled up like mountains. Among them, Fang Chen even saw an exquisitely flawless 8-winged angel. Her expression was gentle and serene, her skin radiant with a white, blushed glow. Her long eyelashes fluttered lightly in the wind, as if she were merely asleep. Fang Chen's pupils contracted. An 8-winged angel in the heavenly realm, she would likely be an existence on par with the sages. Yet even such an existence had perished in this battle for the stone tablet. What exactly was this stone tablet? He looked up and saw that the tablet was densely carved with countless mysterious characters. They were remarkably similar to the script that had flickered within the thunderous light beams earlier. These must be the script of the angel race, Fang Chen realized with sudden clarity. His originally uneasy heart, after being forcibly brought before the stone tablet, gradually calmed itself instead. If the stone all truly intended to take his life, it would have done so long ago. Why bother bringing him here? Centuries have passed, and finally, another living person has entered. A rough and deep voice suddenly sounded without warning, like a corpse speaking from within a grave, chilling to the bone. Fang Chen whipped his head toward the sound. There, atop the stone tablet, 7 figures sat in absolute stillness. 6 of them were utterly decayed. The worst had turned to dust, barely retaining human shape. The less decayed were reduced to a set of dull jade-hued skeletons. Those skeletons signified that, in life, they had once been deity transformation, revered ones standing above all living beings. Their identities were self-evident. They were precisely the 6 missing predecessors of the myriad tribulations' sacred hall, who had perfected the 6 sections of heavenly thunder. They had indeed entered the stone all and passed away in meditation here. But why were there 7 bodies? Suddenly, Fang Chen's pupils violently contracted. He discovered that the centermost corpse was slowly standing up. It was a skeleton clad in tattered white robes, with only withered bones remaining. Its head had been pierced through from front to back by an invisible, terrifying force, leaving a gaping hole. Yet within that skull, there was a thumb-sized soul flame gently flickering. Fang Chen's heart lurched violently. On this ancient battlefield, could there truly still be a living entity? Could it be the mastermind who had orchestrated this for millennia, using the 6 sections of heavenly thunder as bait? What was he truly scheming? The white-robed skeleton looked down from above, casually surveying Fang Chen. Its voice was low and hoarse. You retained your memories. How rare indeed. It paused, a faint light flickering within its empty eye sockets. You must carry great karmic ties. Unfortunately, with this broken body, I am unable to see clearly. Fang Chen stared up at it, a cold snort escaping his nose. Who are you? As soon as the words left his mouth, the space before Fang Chen abruptly rippled, like a lake swept by a violent wind, silent waves spreading outward. The white-robed skeleton flashed into existence right before his eyes, its empty, dark sockets boring straight into him, sending chills down his spine. From its mouth came a grating, deep voice. Who I am is not important. What matters is the extent of your comprehension. Comprehension. Fang Chen pondered silently. Could it be that the white-robed skeleton released the 6 sections of heavenly thunder precisely to screen for prodigies with extraordinary comprehension? Cultivating the 6 sections of heavenly thunder was difficult for 2 reasons. One must comprehend the true essence of the technique, and one must accumulate sufficient thunder power. Warriors of the myriad tribulations' sacred hall never lacked thunder power, yet over thousands of years, those who could perfect all 6 sections were few and far between. This showed that comprehending it was no less difficult than mastering a true heaven-grade cultivation method. But why did it need others' comprehension? Fang Chen's thoughts raced. He suddenly raised his eyes to the dense angelic script on the tablet, then to the mountain of bones beneath it. A thought struck his mind like lightning. Could the inscriptions on the tablet be some kind of cultivation technique? One that requires an extremely high level of comprehension to understand. Within the white-robed skeleton's skull cavity, the emerald, green soul flame gave a slight pulse. How many years did it take you to cultivate the 6 sections of heavenly thunder? Fang Chen rolled his eyes, then feigned thoughtful hesitation. Roughly 10 years. In truth, it had been merely around half a year. But why would he reveal everything to this white-robed skeleton, who was clearly anything but benevolent? The white-robed skeleton slowly nodded. 10 years, even among my angel race that would be considered heaven-sent talent. Compared to those 6, you are far, far superior. It raised a bony finger, pointing toward the distant tablet. You should already be familiar with angelic script. Correct. Fang Chen slightly raised an eyebrow. What makes you say that? The heavenly realm had long been occupied by the ancient giants. The angel race had vanished without a trace for 10,000 years, their culture long extinct. How on earth could the angelic script still be found in the middle continent? Even those who understand hell script can be counted on one hand, can't they? The white-robed skeleton's hoarse voice carried a hint of certainty. Isn't there an angel by your side? Has she not taught you the angelic script? H.M. Fang Chen's pupils abruptly shrank. There is an angel by my side. The skeleton's tone was cold as ice. The aura of the angel race upon you is so thick. You must have spent a long time in close proximity to one. A tidal wave of shock crashed through Fang Chen's heart. There had been an angel hidden by his side all along, and he had been completely unaware. How could that be possible? In a flash of lightning, the image of a quiet, reticent girl who always smiled when she saw him slammed into his mind. Zia Kyoj. He remembered that Zia Kyoj had once wanted to give him a feather, but he had refused at the time. Back then, he only thought the feather was exquisite and beautiful, never pondering it deeply. Now, with a sudden jolt, he realized wasn't that feather the unique characteristic of the angel race. Thinking further, Zia Kyoj also possessed the yin-yang heaven from the 6 sections of heavenly thunder. This indicated that she must have some connection with this white-robed skeleton who had orchestrated such an elaborate scheme with the technique. Then, Zia Kyoj's identity was self-evident. She was an angel. Fang Chen suddenly staggered back a step, his mind spinning with vertigo. How could this be? Zia Kyoj, who had emerged from the lands of the 9 great sects alongside him, was actually an angel. Then, why had she ended up stranded in the middle continent? Why did she appear on that nameless land? The white-robed skeleton said calmly, I must also thank her for completing the 6 sections of heavenly thunder, which finally brought you before me. With you here, my wish can at last be fulfilled. It raised a bony finger, condensing a wisp of eerie phosphorescence at its tip. With a flick, the phosphorescence shot like an icy needle into Fang Chen's forehead. Fang Chen instinctively tried to dodge, but the thunder giant held him in an iron grip, leaving him unable to move even a finger. As the phosphorescence entered his mind, it felt like an icy blade brutally thrust into the depths of his soul. Agonizing pain surged over him like a tidal wave. The white-robed skeleton's voice drifted over from afar. This is the language and script of the angel race. With your comprehension, you should be able to assimilate it within a single day. As its words fell, its figure flickered back to the summit of the stone tablet, where it sat cross-legged. Fang Chen was held rigidly in place by the thunder giant, unable to move at all. Upon realizing that what flooded his mind was the angelic script, Fang Chen's heart surged not with alarm but with delight. To be able to unexpectedly learn the angelic script. Why would he resist? He immediately endured the soul-rending agony and focused on absorbing that strand of phosphorescence. In just a short hour, flashes of understanding gradually surfaced in Fang Chen's eyes. So this was the angelic script. The mysterious characters that had flickered within the thunderous light beams earlier, they originally meant Thunder God's heavenly palace. Does Thunder God's heavenly palace refer to this space? Isn't that name a bit grandiose? Could there really be a so-called Thunder God in the world? However, the most pressing matter now was not these thoughts. It was the stone tablet before him. Fang Chen cautiously glanced at the white-robed skeleton, seeing it seated cross-legged, already immersed in meditation. He immediately focused his gaze on the angelic inscriptions on the tablet, rapidly scanning them. The control scripture for the Thunder God's heavenly palace. Upon successful cultivation, one could control the Thunder God's heavenly palace, become its master, roam the heavens and earth, and attain eternal life. Fang Chen was utterly bewildered. Roam the heavens and earth, eternal and indestructible. If it could grant eternal life, why had the Thunder God's palace fallen here? And was there truly a Thunder God in this world? Still, he keenly caught the most crucial piece of information. Successfully cultivate this technique, and one could control the heavenly palace, becoming the master of this space. Did this mean that he could use this to break free from his bondage, escape from this place, and no longer be threatened by the white-robed skeleton? At that thought, his heart couldn't help but pound heavily. He secretly memorized the controlling scripture word by word, then closed his eyes, calmed his mind, and silently meditated on its meaning. That dead skeleton, he'd give it a surprise later. The white-bone skeleton was also silently sizing up Fang Chen, its mind churning with thoughts. After several thousand years, the lightning, path immortal art hidden here, was finally about to see the light of day again. Great heavenly realm master, I will soon settle that debt from back then with you. Meanwhile, outside, Venerable Lianjing forcefully charged through the layers upon layers of 9, colored thunder, boldly rushing towards the stone cone. Seeing this, Venerable Zinmo grew extremely anxious and shouted urgently, "Great Venerable, please stop. Don't be reckless." His voice trembled. "That 9. Colored thunder is absolutely beyond what a divine transformation Venerable can withstand. You'll be reduced to ashes. If this stone cone could be entered so easily, why would the myriad tribulations, Sacred Hall, spend thousands of years trying to unravel its mysteries? Why not pay the cost and seek help from a great Venerable wouldn't that have solved it long ago? The power of that 9, colored thunder, is by no means something a divine transformation cultivator can resist." Venerable Lianjing said nothing. Her personal domain blossomed, and one after another, luminous precious mirrors appeared, twisting and diverting the incoming 9, colored thunder. With overwhelming supreme power, she forcibly cleaved open a path forward. However, just as Venerable Zinmo had said, the 9, colored thunder, was simply too overbearing. It was not something she could endure at all. Just as her fingertips were about to touch the stone cone, a torrent-like surge of 9, colored thunder erupted from within it, its intensity more than 10 times that outside. That destructive lightning, like a raging sea, roared and swept in all directions. The terrifying thunderclap shook heaven and earth. All things were instantly reduced to dust under the rampage of the 9, colored thunder. The mountain range, within 100 miles radius, directly lost a third of its mass. In its place, a vast expanse of dense, dark cracks in the void remained, looking from afar like an animal hide stretched to its limit, about to burst. Venerable Zinmo's robes were all turned to ash. His body a bloody mess, he fell out from the light of his teleportation and crashed heavily onto the ground. His hands and feet had all been reduced to charcoal, his eyes burned into 2 horrifying bloody holes, and the divine halo behind his head was shattered, with only a fragment of a corner left. He had already moved far from the stone cone, yet he couldn't even flee in time, and ended up in a state where he nearly perished, body and Tao both destroyed. And Venerable Lianjing, who had touched the stone cone up close and violated its taboo, endured an even greater destructive force, over 10 times. If it had been anyone else, even facing the 5 decays of the Celestial, survival would have been virtually impossible. However, Venerable Lianjing did not suffer such grievous injuries. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth, burn marks covered her body, and even the divine halo that symbolized the 5 decays of the Celestial had its 5 fire imprints dimmed on the verge of collapse. Beside her, a young man had appeared at some point, standing with his hands behind his back. He had handsome features, but his gaze was so cold it held no warmth, and terrifying lightning aura swirled around him, making one's heart tremble. The 9, colored thunder that surged like a torrent, when it reached near the young man, all autonomously diverted around him, not harming him in the slightest. He was none other than Shayadi. Had Shayadi not intervened, even if Venerable Lianjing were not destroyed, her entire domain would have been completely obliterated. But this was also because Venerable Lianjing was utterly determined to break into the stone cone and did not dodge at all. Otherwise, with her great venerable realm cultivation, even Venerable Zinmo could teleport to save himself. How could she have failed to escape? Venerable Lianjing's body trembled violently, her lips parted slightly as she cried out in shock, "Fenger." She quickly understood and pressed urgently, "You were already here long ago." Shayadi, who was far away at Shayadi Mountain, how could he have acted so timely when her life hung by a thread? There was only one explanation. Shayadi had already arrived and was nearby, watching coldly from the side. Venerable Lianjing's gaze darkened as she asked with a bitter voice, "What are you here for?" In her heart, she already had the answer. Shayadi's expression was impassive, his tone utterly calm. To fulfill the agreement, kill him. He had once given Fang Chen a choice, within 10 days, abolish that void flow lightning force himself. Today was exactly the 10th day. Shayadi paused, his cold gaze falling on the eerie stone cone, and said calmly, "It seems there is no need for me to act. A being that even my father dares not set his sights on, yet he was captured inside." The implication was clear, Fang Chen was doomed to die. Venerable Lianjing's delicate frame swayed, her pretty face rapidly drained of color, turning a shocking pale. She asked in a trembling voice, What exactly is this thing? Even your father dares not set his sights on it." Shayadi's tone was flat, as if recounting an ordinary old matter, an object older than both the heavenly realm and the underworld. "Those who obtain it never meet a good end. The last one to die at its hands was none other than its owner, the realm master of a generation of the heavenly realm." Venerable Lianjing gasped sharply. The central lands had only existed for 10,000 years, but the heavenly realm and underworld were completely different. Their existence could not even be measured. Perhaps 20,000 years, perhaps 100,000 years, perhaps even longer. The stone cone before her was actually older than the heavenly realm and the underworld. What exactly was it? It even devoured its owner. The heavenly realm master, equal to the ancient sages of the Central Lands, had died at its hands. Then wasn't Fang Chen in grave peril? Grief surged like a tide into venerable Lianjing's heart. Fang Chen, who fought so fiercely against the ancient giants, who devoted himself to protecting those he cared for and the common people of the Central Lands. Yet in the end, he fell before the ancient giants even descended. He must have been unwilling, right? Watching the gradually subsiding nine-colored thunder, she slowly closed her eyes and stepped forward, about to walk toward the stone cone. Shayadi uttered 4 cold words, "Do you want to die?" Without turning her head, Venerable Lianjing's voice was so calm it was frightening. I said I would protect him. I failed. I will go in and have a look. If he is still alive, I will do everything in my power to save him. If he's dead, then I'll stay inside with him. Fang Chen called her foster mother, gave her the opportunity for the 5 decays of the Celestial, and bestowed merit upon her. Yet she couldn't even protect Fang Chen. No one knew how deep the guilt in her heart was. Shayodi said without expression, "You truly care about him. But why deceive yourself? He is already dead. A murderous object that could even kill a realm master. How could Fang Chen survive alone?" Venerable Lianjing's red lips trembled violently as she cried out in anguish. "Then I'll go accompany him." Shayadi's gaze was indifferent as he said coldly, "If he were still alive, he would certainly wish for you to slay more ancient giants in his stead, rather than meaninglessly throwing your life away." With those words, he paid no more attention to Venerable Lianjing, turned around, and stepped into the air, leaving. Venerable Lianjing abruptly halted, her eyes slowly opened. The grief in her eyes grew even more intense. How could she not know that going to her death now was utterly meaningless? She simply could not forgive herself for failing to protect Fang Chen. Gazing at the cold stone cone, a mist rose in Venerable Lianjing's eyes, blurring her vision. Vaguely, she seemed to see again that figure cunning enough to make her rage, brave enough to earn her admiration, and warm enough to move her deeply. Venerable Lianjing could no longer hold back her emotions. Tears streamed down her face. She pressed both hands tightly to her chest, stifling the torn, aching heart, and said through tears, "Your foster mother will first kill all those ancient giants for you. Then I'll come to accompany you." She roughly wiped away her tears, resolutely turned around, not daring to look at the stone cone again. She came before Venerable Zinmo and looked at this already crippled divine transformation. Venerable. Without hesitation, she took out a jade slip and threw it onto Venerable Zinmo's body. Then a fierce light flashed in her eyes as she struck out with a palm fiercely. The enraged strike of a great venerable. How could Venerable Zinmo possibly withstand it? With a single piercing scream, Venerable Zinmo's body exploded on the spot, dying instantly. The people from the Myriad Tribulation's sacred hall in the distance were caught off guard and cried out in unison, "Venerable." Perfected Qionglu shouted in grief and indignation, "Why did you kill our venerable?" Perfected Sanqian's expression was complicated as he said, "Are you avenging Fang Chen?" If the venerable had not invited Fang Chen here, how would he have fallen into such a hopeless situation? They could not shirk responsibility for Fang Chen's misfortune. Venerable Lianjing's face could not hide her sorrow as she said softly, "I did want to kill him, but Fana would certainly not want that." How could he wish for the already few venerables of Taikang Great Region to lose one more? As her words fell, the body of Venerable Zinmo, which had been shattered into a cloud of blood mist, suddenly began to reassemble, centered around the jade slip. His destroyed limbs regenerated, his eyes regained sight. Most importantly, his shattered domain actually reformed as well. This was unmistakably the profound domain left by the young emperor. On the surface, it seemed like revival from death, but in truth, it was an instantaneous body snatching. After the heart, Demon Venerable recovered, he opened his eyes in a daze. He carefully examined himself and could not help but reveal a bitter expression. He bowed deeply towards the compassionate Mirror Venerable. "Many thanks for your help, Great Venerable." The compassionate Mirror Venerable said coldly, "You do not hate me for destroying your chance to resurrect through body." Snatching. The hot demon Venerable hurriedly bowed and said bitterly, "Great Venerable jests. In my current state, facing the calamity of the ancient giants in 3 days, I have no path but death. At that time, where could my soul go to take over another body? In the end, I would only become food in the mouths of the ancient giants. He, the heart demon Venerable, could still distinguish between right and wrong. The compassionate mirror Venerable stared at him coldly, lifted a slender finger to tap her own forehead, then pressed it onto another jade slip and tossed it to him. The heart demon Venerable was overwhelmed by the unexpected favor. This was the compassionate mirror Venerable's domain. She actually gave it to him. Unexpectedly, the compassionate mirror Venerable said indifferently, "Do not overthink. It is not for you." The heart demon Venerable's expression turned sheepish. He should have known the fact that the compassionate mirror Venerable did not resent him over the matter of Fang Chen was already magnanimous. How could she possibly gift him such a precious domain? He asked carefully, "Then whom is the great Venerable leaving it for?" The compassionate mirror Venerable turned to look at that stone spire, her eyes brimming with sorrow. "If Fang Chen is alive, give it to him. If before the ancient giants descend, there is still no news of him, then send it to the heavenly secret pavilion and give it to the person most important to him." This could be considered a small compensation she gave to Fang Chen's kin. The heart demon Venerable sighed inwardly. How could Fang Chen possibly return? He cupped his hands and said, "Yes, great Venerable, do you have any other instructions?" The compassionate mirror Venerable raised her head, gazing at the endless firmament. She closed her eyes for a long while, then gave a long sigh. "The taking great province is indeed my heartbroken place. Now and in the past as well." In the next moment, she vanished from where she stood, leaving only the lingering echoes of her words floating in the air, refusing to fade for a long time. The heart demon Venerable revealed a look of surprise. The compassionate mirror Venerable had regrets in taking great province even back then. He shook his head and looked towards the mountain range, a third of which was destroyed, a shocking sight. Then he looked again at the stone spire, couldn't help clenching the jade talisman in his hand, and sighed, "Fellow Taoist Fang, it was I who brought harm upon you." The far western region of taking great province. A group of people, travel, worn and dusty, traversed this desolate land. The leader was a refined, middle-aged man, none other than the Lord of Fang Mountain, first-grade pavilion. They were carrying a crystal coffin, from which vast and majestic righteous aura surged out from time to time. Suddenly, the pavilion lord halted his steps and abruptly raised his head to gaze into the distance. On his calm and indifferent face, a trace of inexplicable emotion emerged. The deputy pavilion lord behind him asked in surprise, "Pavilion lord, what is it?" The pavilion lord remained silent for a long while before letting out a relieved smile. "An old friend has passed by. Let's go, this is my final transaction. From this day forward, our Fang Mountain first-grade pavilion will also begin preparations to resist the ancient giants." One day later, inside the stone spire, Fang Chen slowly opened his eyes, his gaze filled with unconcealable exhaustion. He had always prided himself on his astonishing comprehension. Even heaven-grade cultivation techniques he could grasp with ease, and originally thought he could comprehend one in half a day. However, facing the control scripture of this thunder god heavenly palace, he felt an unusual strain. After a whole day, he had only grasped a sliver of superficial understanding. This control scripture, though not very long, seemed to possess some indescribable, obscure force that obstructed him from the shadows while he tried to comprehend it, to the point that Fang Chen momentarily doubted his own comprehension ability. If the scripture could be divided into the 4 stages of initial mastery, minor achievement, major achievement, and perfection, he was not even at the entry level yet. The only thing to be thankful for was that the superficial knowledge he had gained happened to be the ability to freely enter and exit this space. As long as he wished, he could now withdraw from the stone spire with a single thought. But the problem was, would it truly be safe after he exited? The 6 volumes of heavenly thunder he cultivated could take control of him again at any moment, forcibly dragging him back here. What on earth should he do? At that moment, that white-robed skeleton suddenly moved. His dark, empty eye sockets slowly fixed their gaze upon him, and with a deep, hoarse voice he asked, "How is your study of the Angel Clan script coming along?" Fang Chen's heart gave a violent leap. This vicious figure had awakened. He forcibly suppressed the turmoil in his heart, rolled his eyes, and replied with feigned calm, "I have only comprehended 90%. The white-robed skeleton's eye sockets were as deep as an abyss, and he said calmly, 90%. Clever as you are, you should have anticipated long ago. Once you fully comprehend the Angel Clan script, you will be even more unable to leave." He paused, then continued in that sinister, hoarse voice, "Either be trapped here for life, comprehending the inscriptions on this stone tablet, or after comprehending the inscription, Tions, be silenced by me. Therefore, what you call 90% is certainly not the truth. If my guess is correct, you have already fully comprehended the Angel Clan script, and in fact, you comprehended it thoroughly long ago. Fang Chen was secretly astonished. This old monster who had lived for an unspeakable number of years, indeed, had a mind as deep as an abyss. It was extremely difficult to deceive him. His expression darkened slightly, and he simply admitted openly, "Correct, I have fully comprehended it." Raising his sword, like eyebrows, Fang Chen instead pressed, "But sir, by forcing me to comprehend the inscriptions like this, aren't you afraid that I might tamper with the inscriptions?" The white-robed skeleton let out a harsh, grating noise, as if mocking. "You don't think that those venerables by my side all willingly came to help me comprehend the inscriptions, do you? Without a doubt, among those 6 predecessors of the Myriad Calamity's sacred hall, there must have been a few stubborn ones. Or perhaps, relying on their own comprehension, they once confronted and resisted this white-robed skeleton. But judging by their current postures of sitting cross-legged in comprehension, it seems they ultimately all compromised. For this kind of old monster, tormenting someone is as easy as lifting a finger." Fang Chen, however, smiled, the corners of his mouth also curving into a hint of sarcasm. "Someone like me, doomed to die soon, why would I fear your torture?" The white-robed skeleton said calmly, "Doomed to die." He paused, then asked in return, "Do you even know your own destiny?" Immediately he waved his hand and said dismissively, "Rest assured, if I do not allow you to die, then no one in this world can kill you." Fang Chen smiled without speaking, his eyes filled with thick sarcasm. The heavenly secret elder once said even the ancient saints could not alter Fang Chen's predestined death. The white-robed skeleton noticed Fang Chen's mocking expression. He was silent for a moment, then the soul flame inside his skull began to flicker violently, as if carefully probing Fang Chen. After a few breaths, the soul flame suddenly flared up, and the skeleton's body, which had been sitting cross-legged, actually let out a creak and abruptly sat upright. In his sinister voice, there was finally a trace of clear fluctuation. So, it truly is a life destined for death. And moreover, it is woven from multiple great karmic entanglements. Some of the karmic ties entangled within this, even I dare not easily involve myself in. Young man, you certainly have an extraordinary background. A thoughtful look appeared in Fang Chen's eyes. This person seemed to see even more clearly than the heavenly secret elder, as if he had glimpsed some of these so-called karmic ties. What kind of karmic ties could cause him to have no choice but to die? And who were those karmic ties involving? If he could know in advance and then avoid those people, would it be possible for the unseen fate to have a glimmer of change? Just as his thoughts were racing, the white-robed skeleton's tone returned to cold indifference, saying calmly, "It seems I truly cannot force you. In that case, let us make a trade." In his perception, Fang Chen's life was like a flickering candle in the wind, with little time left. Even if he resorted to torture, given this boy's temperament, he would certainly endure it stubbornly until the day of his death. The only plan now was to tempt him with benefits. And this was exactly what Fang Chen wanted in his heart. His eyes flashed with a sharp light, and he immediately pressed, "What can you give me, senior?" The white-robed skeleton said in a deep voice, "A way to live. Comprehend the inscriptions for me to the end, and I will make an exception to let you leave." Upon hearing this, Fang Chen snorted dismissively and shook his head. "These inscriptions are so profound. By the time this junior finishes comprehending them, I'm afraid I will only have a few days left to live. Whether you let me go or not, what difference does it make?" The white-robed skeleton's empty gaze fell upon him, and he asked calmly, "Then what do you want?" Fang Chen cupped his hands immediately, his tone impassioned and fervent. "Senior, the ancient giants are about to descend. I, Fang Chen, can die, but I wish to fight for a sliver of survival for the billions of living beings in the Middle Earth." He performed a deep bow, his voice deep. "Please, Senior, bestow upon us a divine artifact and supernatural treasure to aid us in slaying the ancient giants." The white-robed skeleton said calmly, "Ancient giants, are those the dark creatures that devour humans?" He paused as if recalling something, and said slowly, 10,000 years ago, they did not exist in this world. He had already heard from the 6 venerables earlier. Every 1,000-year cycle, a catastrophe brought by the ancient giants would erupt. The white-robed skeleton's tone was indifferent, as if stating a trivial matter. They embody greed, brutality, cunning, treachery, and many other negative emotions. They should be artificially created beings. Fang Chen's expression immediately changed. Artificially created? Even ancient sages dared not claim they could create living beings. Such ferocious and incomparable existences as the ancient giants were actually artificially created. A huge doubt rose in Fang Chen's heart. However, the more urgent matter at hand was not the origin of the ancient giants. He gathered his focus and asked urgently, "Senior, do you possess a divine treasure that can deal with them?" The white-robed skeleton said flatly, "A bunch of creatures that only know how to crawl in the dark. Are they worthy of me using a divine treasure?" Before the words finished, he raised his pallid bony claw and clawed fiercely at the void. In an instant, the atmosphere in this space immediately became turbulent. Only the crackling sounds of violent detonation were heard incessantly. One after another, 9 colored lightning arcs madly gathered from the void, shimmering with dazzling light, completely condensing in his palm. Thousands of lightning arcs continuously converged, then were madly compressed. Finally, they transformed into a thumb-sized 9 colored crystal, brilliant and dazzling, yet radiating an aura of total annihilation. "Take it." The white-robed skeleton tossed it casually. Fang Chen's heart shivered, and he hastily used spatial power to capture the crystal from afar, not daring to let it come close to him in the slightest. Because even at such a distance, he could clearly feel the terrifying energy within the 9 colored crystal, enough to destroy heaven and earth. This power was comparable to the heaven, covering demon palm that the Asura Saint Sun had struck when pursuing them in the void that day. He couldn't help but feel his mouth dry and his voice trembled. Is this the sage strike?" The white-robed skeleton chuckled lightly. "Sages, in your Middle-earth, there are already very few sages who can withstand a single strike of this 9 colored crystal." He shifted his tone and warned, "Of course, no matter how powerful a killing weapon is, it depends on who wields it. You want to use this to kill a sage. That is utterly impossible. Indeed, a sharp blade that reaps lives like cutting grass, held in the hand of a 3-year-old child versus in the hand of an adult. Its lethality is completely incomparable. If a sage were to activate this 9 colored crystal, they would naturally unleash its rightful terrifying power. But Fang Chen, I fear he wouldn't even have a chance to activate it before being instantly slain under a sage's palm." However, Fang Chen never intended to use this treasure on a sage from beginning to end. This was something he had prepared for those ancient giants, a heaven-shaking great gift. He quickly took out a separate spatial storage tool and carefully placed the 9 colored crystal inside. After storing the treasure, Fang Chen couldn't help but excitedly cup his hands and bow. "Many thanks, Senior." The white-robed skeleton said indifferently, "The transaction is done. Peacefully comprehend that controls scripture for me. After it's accomplished, I'll give you another great gift."
"Oh?"
Fang Chen's gaze shifted, and he probingly asked, "Please, Senior, reveal a little, so that this junior may have more motivation." He would be leaving this place soon. How could he wait until the day the scripture was fully comprehended? The white-robed skeleton said calmly, "It is about that angel clan member by your side. She has a great background and carries a heaven-sent fortune on her. When the time comes, I can instruct you on how to steal her fortune for your own use." So it referred to Zia Keoj. As for the great fortune on her, Fang Chen had long vaguely sensed it. It seemed that as Zia Keoj's cultivation realm advanced, she would always mysteriously master new techniques and acquire new valuable treasures. For example, she, who was never skilled in the way of the sword, suddenly one day became proficient in profound sword arts. The yin-yang heaven, which had been lost for hundreds of years, suddenly appeared in her hands. And that life-saving feather she gave him, that was also something she had definitely never possessed before. But Fang Chen had never thought of seizing Zia Keoj's fortune. He, however, put on an excited expression and deliberately said loudly, "She could actually produce the yin-yang heaven. She must have even more formidable treasures. This junior will go comprehend the scripture for you now." The white-robed skeleton stared at Fang Chen's back. In his heart, a trace of disdain flickered secretly. As expected, a greedy and insatiable person, even willing to betray a friend so easily. "Very well, that 9 colored crystal shall be temporarily left in your custody." The implication was clear. After the matter was accomplished, he would definitely kill Fang Chen and personally take back the 9 colored crystal. However, just as Fang Chen had made a gesture, as if to begin comprehension, he suddenly turned around and spoke again. "Senior." He raised his hand and pointed at the thunder giant that tightly enveloped him, saying, "Could you first remove this restriction? Comprehending scripture is definitely not a matter of days. Keeping me trapped like this forever isn't a good solution, is it?" The white-robed skeleton didn't hesitate with a thought. That thunder giant instantly dispersed, transforming into a sky full of thunder arcs that crackled and splattered everywhere. Fang Chen's eyes flashed with a gleam. He secretly activated the heavenly abyss heart, madly absorbing the scattered, wandering thunder arcs into his body as much as possible. These were all rare good things. How could they be wasted in vain? A moment later, about 30% of the thunder power was completely absorbed by him, the rest all dissipated and fled. This 30% alone was already comparable to the thunder force that Mind Demon Venerable had given him before. By estimation, if he absorbed another 40% of thunder power, the heavenly abyss heart would be completely filled. Fang Chen showed a satisfied expression, then cupped his hands again as if sincerely praising, "Senior, truly what a clever method." Releasing a heavenly thunder 6 chapters, with hidden traps, you can control all the Thunder Dao prodigies in the world who possess comprehension. Those cultivators, I'm afraid, would not notice anything amiss until the very last moment. He changed the subject and conveniently asked, "This junior boldly inquires of senior, how exactly did you accomplish this?" The white-robed skeleton was already somewhat impatient and said coldly, "The Heavenly Thunder 6 chapters is originally a domain used by the Angel clan to control important Ves. Once cultivated, you will be bound to it for life." The white-robed skeleton warned coldly, "Don't think of playing tricks to get rid of it." Fang Chen's heart was greatly shaken. This Heavenly Thunder 6 chapters was actually a domain. His pupils contracted sharply. He had imagined countless possibilities, but he never expected that this Earth, tier high-grade technique was, in essence, a domain. The white-robed skeleton spoke lightly. Otherwise, how could an Earth-level technique temporarily boost one's cultivation to the divine transformation realm? Each chapter of the Heavenly Thunder 6 chapters, you comprehend, is an insight into a domain. Once all 6 chapters are fully comprehended, a domain is implanted within your body. In the future, if you encounter powerful members of the Angel clan, they can all control you through this. Fang Chen stood stunned in place, speechless for a long time. So this was the truth of the Heavenly Thunder 6 chapters. No wonder the heaven-level technique Grand Derivation Sword Array had never allowed him to defy the heavens and temporarily step into the divine transformation realm, while an RTHT or high grade Heavenly Thunder 6 chapters had done it. So it contained the domain of an Angel clan expert, silently and soundlessly erasing others' memories, wiping traces of existence, and even inadvertently planting a domain in the human body, enslaving them for an entire lifetime. The methods of the Angel clan are truly mysterious and eerie, impossible to guard against. The white-robed skeleton changed his tone and urged, "All right, it's time to properly comprehend the engravings. If you still wish to go out and assist taking great province in resisting the ancient giants, then stop wasting time." Fang Chen took a deep breath, cupped his fists and bowed, saying solemnly, "Yes, senior, also, thank you for your assistance, senior. This junior will remember it in his heart. We shall meet again in the future." The white-robed skeleton had sensed something amiss the moment he heard the 4 words, "Thank you, senior." "When we shall meet again," reached his ears. A foreboding premonition surged forth. In the next instant, Fang Chen's mind stirred abruptly, and he silently recited the angel race's inscriptions. "Out!" With that single word, his figure vanished from within the stone cone space, as if erased from existence. The white-robed skeleton froze for a split second. It took a full 3 breaths before he snapped back to his senses. He shot to his feet, the soul flames in his empty eye sockets dancing wildly with disbelief, and let out an incredulous cry. He has already comprehended the control scripture. When did that happen? By his estimation of Fang Chen's comprehension, even grasping the rudiments of the control inscriptions would require at least a year. But Fang Chen had only been here for a day. He suddenly realized Fang Chen had been lying from the very beginning. He definitely hadn't practiced the Heavenly Thunder 6-fold scripture for 10 years, very likely only 1 year. No, not even a full year. Only thus could he, in a single day, achieve a level of comprehension that would take others an entire year. The white-robed skeleton's voice turned icy cold, chilling to the bone. "Deceive me? You think you can escape?" Outside, hundreds of meters away from the stone cone in the sky, Fang Chen stumbled as he dropped out of thin air. Without pausing to steady himself, he immediately activated Shadow in the clouds. A thunderous boom resounded as a dragon of lightning swiftly coalesced, bearing him at breakneck speed toward the distance. Yet halfway through its flight, the thunder dragon suddenly twisted and rolled violently, then erupted with a deafening blast, shattering into a sky full of lightning. A chill went through Fang Chen's heart. The white-robed skeleton was manipulating the heavenly thunder sixfold scripture. Indeed, a vast expanse of lightning surged out from the stone cone, coalescing above his head in the blink of an eye into a sea of thunder, then crashing down as a colossal thunder giant. The scene of his previous capture was about to replay before his eyes. "Want to drag me back? Dream on," Fang Chen shouted sternly, opening his palm. In his palm appeared an exquisite butterfly of crystalline ice. This was precisely the secret treasure bestowed by Iceheart, Great Venerable, for his outstanding performance in the interlayer world, capable of nullifying domain effects 3 times. It had already been used once. This was the 2nd time. Just as the thunder giant was about to completely envelop him, the ice crystal butterfly gently fluttered its wings, and the nearly formed giant dissipated soundlessly, crumbling away. Fang Chen seized the opportunity, decisively activating Heavenly Abyss Heart, straining with all his might to absorb the scattered thunder force. In a matter of a few breaths, a full 30% of the thunder was greedily devoured into his body like a whale swallowing the sea. Having done this, he dared not delay a moment longer and turned to flee. For if the white-robed skeleton could stir the domain within him once, he could do so again, and the ice crystal butterfly had only one chance left. His figure flickered madly as he bolted desperately toward the teleportation hall. At that moment, a disdainful snort came from within the stone cone. "No wonder you dared to flee. So you possess a secret treasure that dissolves domains. But in my presence, how could you possibly escape?" Before the words had even finished, the stone cone suddenly trembled violently. At the cone's apex, a 9-colored vortex emerged out of thin air, its terrifying suction power locking onto Fang Chen from a distance. In an instant, a suffocating despair of being swallowed by the void's rifts seized his throat. Before such an irresistible force, all divine arts and spells were as insignificant as dust. His body was instantly dragged backward uncontrollably, hurtling toward the stone cone. Fang Chen's heart nearly leaped into his throat. He had severely underestimated the methods of this mysterious white-robed skeleton. If caught again, need one even ask what fate awaited him? It would surely be dire, with not even a sliver of escape opportunity granted. What to do? Just as anxiety burned within him, the soul crystal in his bosom floated away on its own. Looking closely, it was Hua Xin controlling it. It turned out that this female ghost had long since recovered some of her power, secretly holding a trump card. Only now, seeing Fang Chen driven to desperation, was she forced to reveal it. Fang Chen was both furious and amused. Suddenly, a flash of Hua Xin's residual memory surfaced in his mind. In that vision, Hua Xin stood alone, facing several 9-winged angels, clearly having a deep-seated enmity with the angel race. His eyes darted, and he decisively cast out the void fishing rod, hooking the fleeing Hua Xin back and gripping her in his palm without a word. Hua Xin instantly shrieked in terror. "Ah, Fang Chen, let go of me." Fang Chen sneered coldly and without a second word, backhandedly threw her straight into the thunder vortex. Hua Xin was scared out of her wits, her scream distorting. "Ah, damn Fang Chen, are you really using me as a human shield? I'll never forgive you." A streak of light flashed, and Hua Xin was sucked into the stone cone's space. Before she could even take in her surroundings, a suffocating aura assailed her, and eerily before her eyes materialized a white-robed skeleton. Its dark, hollow eye sockets fixed upon Hua Xin, a ghastly voice spoke. "Your aura seems familiar." Hua Xin's face twitched violently, her whole body trembling like a sieve, forcing a smile uglier than tears. "Senior I have no connection with Fang Chen. That despicable, treacherous, cunning little thief. There's an irreconcilable grudge between us. On this point, we are alike." Who knew that the moment she finished speaking, Fang Chen's frantic shout came from outside. "Hua Xin, my dear wife, don't. How can you risk your life against that fiend for my sake? How could I live on alone like this?" Hua Xin's head buzzed. What did Fang Chen just call her? Wife? And risking her life for him? She was clearly thrown in by him. The white-robed skeleton spoke with icy menace. "You are quite courageous." The words dripped with murderous intent. In that instant, Hua Xin cursed Fang Chen from head to toe in her heart 18 times over, while hastily defending herself. "Senior, I swear, I truly have a blood feud with Fang Chen, a mortal enemy that I cannot share the sky with." Just then, a soft poof sounded. A purple talisman on Hua Xin's back suddenly ignited, and a profound force descended abruptly. This talisman was all too familiar to Hua Xin. It was Fang Chen's weapon, wish paper. When he threw her in, Fang Chen had attached the wish paper to her back and activated it. The profound force instantly enveloped the white-robed skeleton, and a single will manifested: slumber for one breath. Given the white white-robed skeleton's mystery and power, Fang Chen never expected to harm it in the slightest. He only hoped to make it slumber for a single breath, causing the thunder vortex to lose control so that he could break free. However, the white-robed skeleton's expression remained blank, and it said indifferently, "Such petty tricks of the Confucian Tao, how could they possibly affect me?" With a gentle wave of his hand, the profound force enveloping him immediately dispersed, causing him no effect whatsoever. But what he hadn't expected was that after the talisman paper on Huo Xin's back burned out, a black lotus leaf was revealed. It was a leaf from the degree evasion Black Lotus, which had once transformed into a sage realm hell creature in the interlayer world and reverted to its original form after being slain. The Great Wine Sacrifice had carved a sage inscription upon it, Everlasting Smile, and combined with the leaf's inherent laws, it became a unique object bearing dual inscriptions. As the lotus leaf emerged, the sage inscription upon it erupted with force. An intangible power of rules radiated outward like ripples, surging abruptly. Hua Xin and the white-robed skeleton were instantly struck by this force. Hua Xin immediately convulsed uncontrollably, bursting into bizarre laughter. He, tilde, I'm dying of laughter, tilde. She laughed so hard she doubled over, yet gritted her teeth and cursed. Damned Fang Chen, how many things did you plant on me? Ha ha ha. Hua Xin laughed until tears streamed down her face, while fearfully waving at the white-robed skeleton. Senior, don't glare at me. It's Fang Chen's scheme. Trust me. Sob sob. Ha ha ha. Even the white-robed skeleton, with heaven, defying cultivation, was also implicated by this bizarre law. Involuntarily, a strange heh-heh chuckle slipped from his throat. But in the next instant, his soul flame jolted fiercely, forcibly suppressing the laughter. However, what made his soul flame swell with fury, unable to contain his rage, was, in that brief instant, while he was affected by the laughter law, the thunder vortex experienced a momentary stagnation. Fang Chen seized this crucial opening, his form transforming into an ethereal cloud shadow, and in a flash escaped the thunder vortex's enveloping range. Not only that, but he also completely broke free from the heavenly thunder sixfold scripture's enslaving boundary. The white-robed skeleton flew into a berserk rage, bellowing a heaven-shaking roar, damnation. He had actually let a tiny ant slip through his fingers, and been made a fool of twice in succession. That earlier wish paper was nothing but a feint, a smokescreen. The truly lethal hidden move was actually that lotus leaf. However, just as his fury blazed sky high, a rift silently split open in the void behind Hua Xin. A gleaming golden fishhook stealthily emerged and shot toward Hua Xin's body with lightning speed. The white-robed skeleton, enraged to the point of laughter, snarled, "Do you take me for a mere ghost? How dare he try to rescue his nominal wife right before my eyes?" He raised his hand and made a grasping motion through the air. A terrifying, formless force instantly ensnared Hua Xin. But the fishhook executed a cunning feint, skimming just past Hua Xin's back. It only precisely hooked away the lotus leaf affixed to her back, leaving Hua Xin alone, awkwardly staring at with the white-robed skeleton. Hua Xin froze for a moment, then burst into loud laughter. She doubled over, her laughter shaking the very air around her. The white-robed skeleton, murderous intent roiling around him, said in a voice as cold as bone, piercing frost, "Very funny, is it?" Though terrified to the point of tears welling in her eyes, Hua Xin still clutched her belly and couldn't stop laughing. "I want to cry too, but I just can't." "Woo, woo, woo, ha 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 ha." The white-robed skeleton gave a cold snort. A formless force burst from his body, shattering the everlasting smile law that had been imposed on Hua Xin. Only then did Hua Xin finally return to normal. She vigorously rubbed her aching laughter, sore cheeks, forcing a smile uglier than a grimace. She cautiously spoke. "Senior, you saw it yourself. Fang Chen wanted the treasure, not me. How could I possibly be that little scumbag's wife? Please don't kill the innocent by mistake." The white-robed skeleton let out a chilling sneer. "Heh, if you're not his wife, then you're useless to me. Besides, I find your aura utterly repulsive. I suspect we have a history between us." Hua Xin's head buzzed as she instantly understood. If she really were Fang Chen's wife, she could be a hostage to lure him back. If not, she was worthless. Her eyes darted frantically as she hastily cried out, "Wait." She gritted her teeth, suppressing her overwhelming discomfort, and forced herself to say, I actually am Fang Chen's wife." Though deeply unwilling, for the sake of survival, she could only endure and play along. The white-robed skeleton's gaze turned icy as he scoffed. "One moment you are, the next you're not. Are you fooling me?" Hua Xin shuddered in fright and hastily added, I really am, and I am the woman Fang Chen cares for most, the one who has accompanied him the longest. You could say we are together day and night. His other women he only sees once in a long while. Only me he always keeps by his side, inseparable. The white-robed skeleton gave a cold snort and flicked his finger. A pure white, sacred feather materialized out of thin air, hovering silently before Hua Xin. Swear by this feather. If you lie, the feather will turn black and rot. Without a moment's hesitation, Hua Xin faced the feather and declared resolutely, every word I just spoke is true. I am absolutely not lying. The white feather glimmered with holy light, and far from showing any sign of blackening, it became even more radiant and immaculate. The white-robed skeleton regarded her with renewed suspicion. You really are a woman who shares his days and nights. He was genuinely puzzled. How could Fang Chen abandon such an important woman without attempting to save her? Could it be that, knowing rescue was impossible, he settled for the next best thing and only took the lotus leaf? If that were the case, it would barely make sense. He glared at Hua Xin for a long moment, then finally snorted coldly, You had better pray he comes back to save you. With those words, he leaped back onto the pinnacle of the stone stele and sat cross-legged. Only then did Hua Xin let out a long sigh of relief, secretly grateful to have narrowly escaped with her life. She thought smugly to herself, after staying by that little scoundrel's side for so long, even if I haven't learned his shamelessness, I've at least picked up a few simple word games. When she swore, she had only said she was the woman Fang Chen cared for most, always by his side, not a single word about being his wife. All this time, she had been inside the phantom soul crystal wasn't that indeed staying by Fang Chen's side day and night. So naturally, the feather didn't turn black. Then Hua Xin gnashed her teeth in fury. That little brat using me as bait. Fine, just you wait. If I survive this, I'll chop you into 81 pieces. Then fry, stew, stir, fry, and barbecue every last bit, and feed them all to the dogs. She thoroughly detested Fang Chen. To imprison her for so long, and then throw her into such a deadly predicament in the end. How utterly outrageous. But she was now just a wisp of a remnant soul. If Fang Chen didn't turn back to save her, how could she possibly escape the clutches of the white-robed skeleton? Even someone as cunning as Fang Chen had only barely managed to flee for his life by using every trick he had. Suddenly, Hua Xin's gaze swept over the foot of the stone stele where many angel corpses lay piled. Among them, the broken body of an 8-winged angel stirred an uncanny sense of familiarity within her. Then, deep within her soul, her shattered memories, as if summoned, slowly began to reassemble themselves, growing clearer and clearer. Her eyes shifted from initial bewilderment and vacancy to shock, then to sheer disbelief. Finally, everything settled into calm. She sighed inwardly with a dawning realization, so that's how it is. Meanwhile, on the other side, after successfully escaping, Fang Chen wasted no time activating the spatial teleportation array, instantly vanishing into the distance. When he reappeared, he was already standing inside the teleportation hall of Mooncleansing Lake. He leaned one hand against the wall, gasping for breath, beads of sweat the size of soybeans rolling down his forehead, his heart pounding like a thunderous drum. I almost met my end in that myriad calamity's sacred hall. Recalling the harrowing moments, Fang Chen felt a chill run down his spine, overwhelmed by lingering fear. If he had to do it all over again, he wouldn't have the slightest confidence in escaping alive again. That white-robed skeleton's power was unfathomable, and his methods bizarre and unpredictable. He had no doubt that, aside from the heavenly thunder sixfold and the thunder vortex, his opponent still had plenty of ways to snatch him back from a distance. Thankfully, at that critical, life-or-death moment, he had ultimately broken free. I'll never set foot in myriad calamities, sacred hall again in this lifetime. As for Hua Xin, that woman is no harmless flower. She might not come out too badly. He had originally been fretting over how to deal with Hua Xin's remnant soul. Release her, and she might become a future threat. Keep her by his side, and she was still a latent risk. Now, leaving her inside that Thunder God's heavenly palace was actually the best solution. Let Hua Xin and that old monster fight it out between themselves. Not only have I filled the heavenly abyss heart this time, but I've also acquired a 9-colored crystal capable of threatening a Sage Realm expert. Fang Chen carefully inventoried his gains, a smile spreading uncontrollably across his face. The process had been perilous beyond measure, but the rewards were beyond anything he could have imagined. This meant that from now on, if he encountered a hostile Sage Realm powerhouse, he wouldn't just be waiting to die. He now possessed a measure of deterrence. The only pity is that I used up the sage inscription left by the grand wine sacrifice of the myriad demon great province. Fang Chen looked down at the lotus leaf in his hand. The 4 characters everlasting smile that had been inscribed upon it had now completely vanished. This was a one-time use sage inscription. Once used, it was gone forever. He had originally intended to keep it to deal with that nearly invincible giant king, but alas, to save his own life, he had been forced to expend it here prematurely. Just as disappointment settled in, the corner of his eye caught something unusual. Where the characters had vanished, an extremely faint, shallow carved mark still remained. That shouldn't be. Once an inscription is used, it should dissipate entirely. How can there be a remnant? A look of confusion appeared on Fang Chen's face. Soon he was astonished to discover that the faint mark was actually slowly deepening. A flash of lightning crossed his mind, and he instantly realized one possibility. He couldn't help but murmur aloud, could it be that the lotus leaf's own law is causing everlasting smile to reconcentrate? He carefully considered the nature of the lotus. A single lotus seed falls into a pond, and given time, the entire water surface is often covered with emerald leaves. The lotus inherently embodies concepts of propagation and rebirth. That would perfectly explain it. Why was the vanished sage law actually reconcentrating? Realizing this, Fang Chen's heart suddenly started pounding uncontrollably. Doesn't this mean that from now on, as long as I inscribe the sage law onto the lotus leaf, I can use it an unlimited number of times? The calamity, averting Black Lotus, is truly brimming with supreme treasures. The lotus seed was already heaven-defying, but this lotus leaf is even more heaven-defying. Overjoyed beyond measure, Fang Chen carefully took out a jade box and solemnly sealed the lotus leaf inside. After some time, the inscription Everlasting Smile on it would reform and be complete once more. When that moment came, it could be activated again. With a sharp tearing sound, the teleportation array beside Fang Chen suddenly erupted with a surge of spatial power. Fang Chen's heart lurched, and he was jolted alert. Could it be that the white-robed skeleton was chasing him here? Without a moment's hesitation, he drew the purple lightning divine sword. Just then, from within the chaotic spatial energies, the heart demon Venerable's urgent voice rang out. Fellow Taoist Fang, stay your hand. So it was the heart demon Venerable. Fang Chen relaxed slightly, but then a surge of fury shot straight to his head. With a sweep of his sword, he slashed fiercely beside the heart demon Venerable. The raging sword aura instantly shredded the spatial energies. The warping heart demon Venerable stumbled, tumbled out of the void in a miserable heap, and crashed face first onto the ground. The heart demon Venerable gave a pained howl. He was about to vent his anger, but when he looked up into Fang Chen's eyes churning with rage, he instantly felt a pang of guilt. Coughing twice, he said awkwardly, "Cough, cough, fellow Taoist Fang, regarding that stone hammer, I had no idea it was so perilous. Had I known, I would never have asked you to come to the Myriad Tribulation, Sacred Hall. Your current combat strength rivals the deity transformation stage. You are an invaluable asset in resisting the catastrophe of the ancient giants. If I had harmed you, wouldn't I be destroying my own great wall?" Only then did Fang Chen, his face still dark, sheath his sword and coldly snort, "You nearly killed me. Our friendship ends here." The heart demon Venerable smiled bitterly. "Whether we sever ties or not is a matter for later. I'm here first to congratulate you on cheating death, and second, to deliver a treasure entrusted to you by Lianjing Great Venerable." As he spoke, he produced that jade talisman engraved with the domain power of Lianjing Great Venerable. Inwardly, he could not help but sigh. Even the young emperor had declared Fang Chen doomed without a doubt. He had never imagined Fang Chen would actually make it out alive. This was nothing short of a miracle among miracles. Fang Chen accepted the jade talisman and asked with concern, "My godmother wasn't hurt, was she?" He could imagine how, after he was captured and dragged into the stone cone, Venerable Lianjing, with her personality, must have been consumed by guilt and would have recklessly charged into the stone cone to rescue him. A look of deep respect appeared on the heart demon Venerable's face, and he said gravely, "Lianjing Great Venerable risked her life to save you and nearly perished on the spot." He then gave a rough account of the entire sequence of events. A trace of emotion flickered in Fang Chen's eyes, and he murmured softly, "A godsend she only recently acknowledged, with no bond of blood. Was it really worth going that far?" Then again, he felt a swell of relief. So the young emperor arrived long ago. If I hadn't been accidentally swept into the stone cone, I would have had to face him directly. At best, my void flow thunder force would have been crippled. At worst, I would have been slain on the spot, right? The young emperor was every bit as dangerous as that white-robed skeleton. The image of the young emperor fighting 2 opponents alone that day was still etched vividly in Fang Chen's memory. If he set out to kill him, no one in the entire Taking Great State could save him. Not even the Grand Libationer could guarantee his protection. Being trapped inside the stone cone for a day had inadvertently allowed him to avoid this fatal calamity. But it was only a temporary reprieve. A cold, sharp glint flashed through Fang Chen's eyes. For the void flow thunder force, you've hounded me all the way from the mainland. You better pray that I don't reach the 5 decays of heaven and man before I die. Otherwise, I will settle this debt with you. At that moment, the Heart Demon Venerable produced a few more items. They were a mass of thunder power and several jade talismans. With an apologetic expression, he said, "These are my personal compensation to you. The thunder power is not much, but it's all I have on me. These jade talismans are sealed with my domain. Though it cannot compare to Lianjing Great Venerables, it can still prove useful in a pinch." Fang Chen tried hard to recall the Heart Demon Venerable's domain. It took him a long moment to remember. That day, when he first set foot in the heavenly realm and encountered a 9 orifice giant, Song Ling Yu had used the Heart Demon Venerable's domain to protect everyone. Its effect was to stir inner demons and cause violent emotional turmoil. For an 8 orifice nascent soul cultivator, intense emotional fluctuations often led to a terrifying result: falling into madness. Fang Chen gripped the jade talismans tightly and said with solemn gratitude, "Many thanks." These were truly excellent items. Once an 8 orifice nascent soul fell into madness, their combat strength would skyrocket crazily. This was also the very essence of the Central Land's martial Dao system. On the Heavenly Mountain battlefield, Fang Chen had witnessed with his own eyes a human 9 orifice nascent soul cultivator, single-handedly slaying 9 ancient giants of the same rank. That was the power of falling into madness. If the Heavenly Secret Pavilion ever reached its final hour, they could activate the Heart Demon Venerable's domain, driving all 8 orifice nascent soul cultivators into madness to fight to the death. Moreover, though that mass of thunder power was small, combined with the thunder giant power he had absorbed twice and the first batch gifted by the Heart Demon Venerable, it was precisely enough to fully charge the Heavenly Abyss Heart. He could once again unleash the 6-fold unity and temporarily ascend to the deity transformation stage for 5 breaths of time. The Heart Demon Venerable said shamefacedly, "You need not thank me. I just hope you don't hold a grudge against the Myriad Tribulation Sacred Hall." Fang Chen waved his hand and sighed, "Forget it. Your Myriad Tribulation Sacred Hall is the real victim here. Several of your predecessors fell because of this." The Heart Demon Venerable's brows suddenly furrowed in confusion. Several predecessors. Fang Chen gave an inward start. It seemed that the memories of everyone in the Myriad Tribulation Sacred Hall, along with their historical records, had been permanently altered. What sort of technique was this? He shook his head and said lightly, "It's nothing. Heart Demon Venerable, we shall meet on the battlefield." The Heart Demon Venerable clasped his fists in farewell. Only 2 days remain. Farewell. Only 2 days left. Fang Chen picked up his identity token and only then noticed that while he had been comprehending the Control Sutras, the Imperial Observatory had issued a new message. There were only 2 days left until the ancient giants descended. His heart grew heavy. After seeing off the Heart Demon Venerable, he slowly walked out of the Great Hall and cast a distant gaze toward that beautiful white tower. In his mind, a beautiful figure in a light yellow dress involuntarily appeared. He was about to step forward when he realized that the restrictions around the White Tower had been activated, barring anyone from entering. "Is Zhenyan still in cultivation? But didn't I poison all the spirit fish?" Where could she have found an opportunity for deity transformation? Fang Chen pondered for a moment, but ultimately did not disturb her. He turned around, his gaze reaching far toward the azure sea in the south. It was as if his vision had already traversed the endless space to reach the distant mainland. Silently, he took out the orifice-opening divine nail. His expression complex, he murmured, "Yao Yu, you are the final obstacle to my deity transformation." If he still had any lingering regret, it was those innocent kin of the 9 sects who had died unjustly in the Battle of Jai Mountain. Especially the death of Fu Keijun, who, on his deathbed, had entrusted him with the ancient zither. All of them had perished at Yao Yu's hands. Countless times in his heart, he had sworn to avenge their deaths. But events had turned against his wishes. Not only had he formed a soul, linking bug with Yao Yu, sharing in each other's glory and ruin, but he had also repeatedly received kindness from Yao Yu's own mother, Senior Ling Yin. Killing Yao Yu to avenge them had become an unsolvable dilemma. If he killed Yao Yu, the backlash from the soul linking bug would annihilate Fang Chen's soul along with hers. Even without the threat of the soul linking bug, how could he face Ling Yin after killing Yao Yu? He let out a long sigh and murmured, "This final trial for deity transformation is indeed the most difficult tribulation to overcome." Fang Chen shook his head, dejectedly put away the orifice-opening divine nail, turned around and stepped into the teleportation array, heading back to the heavenly secret pavilion first. Almost at the same instant, on the mainland within the 100 Flowers Valley, Ling Yin sat silently beneath a peach blossom tree, leisurely feeding the little fish that had gathered in the stream nearby. As if sensing something, she raised her eyes and looked toward the direction of taking great state, murmuring to herself so quickly, "You have already resolved those other regrets. Then let me lend you a hand." She raised her fair hand and gently plucked a peach blossom from the tree above her head. Parting her crimson lips slightly, she softly blew a breath onto the peach blossom petal. In the next instant, the peach blossom swelled up swiftly like a skin being inflated. In the span of a mere moment, it miraculously transformed into a human shape. With brows and eyes like a painting and a radiant beauty at the age of 18, it was unmistakably the likeness of Yao Yu. However, those eyes were hollow and lifeless, devoid of any vitality, merely an empty shell. Ling Yin examined the shell and nodded with satisfaction, murmuring, "The appearance is fine, but to deceive Fang Chen, this empty vessel alone won't suffice." Her plan was simple: create a fake Yao Yu and let Fang Chen slay her with his own hands. In this way, the void in Fang Chen's heart would be filled, his Dao heart would naturally reach perfection, and he would smoothly step into the deity transformation realm. But given Fang Chen's intelligence and alertness, how could this empty shell possibly fool him? Ling Yin said indifferently, "Obtaining a soul to fill this shell is no great difficulty. The real trouble is that Fang Chen might not bear to strike. His scruples are, after all, too many." Her words fell. Suddenly, as if sensing something, Ling Yin's lips curled slightly, revealing a mysterious smile. Giksu Province, Tianyi City. Inside the City Lord's mansion, the Tianyi City Lord had shrunk his body to a normal human size, with 5 ferocious Dharma forms swirling around him. He patted the young City Lord on the shoulder and earnestly admonished, "Zhong'er, you must take care of yourself. Your life is the priority. Retrieving the Imperial daughter comes second." The young City Lord nodded solemnly, his eyes shooting sharp light, and said in a deep voice, "Father, rest assured, I know my limits. I will preserve my life, and the Imperial daughter must be saved, and Fang Chen must die." The earth-shattering event at Tianyi City had long since spread throughout the 9 provinces of the Central Plains. A nascent soul cultivator, balancing a city on a single palm, had boldly stormed into Tianyi City. Right under the nose of the Tianyi City Lord, he slaughtered over half of the Dharma form realm half-giants in the city. This was an unbearable humiliation. Given the half-giants' typically domineering and tyrannical nature, how could they swallow such an insult? They would surely seek revenge on Fang Chen to vent their hatred. Moreover, Fang Chen still held the purple, crimson Imperial daughter in his grasp. Whether using the purple, crimson Imperial daughter as a hostage or offering her as a lavish gift to curry favor with the ancient giants, it could help the half-giants gain a slim chance of survival in the coming catastrophe. Reclaiming the Imperial daughter and killing Fang Chen, this had become the unified will of all half-giants in Tianyi City. It was a pity that the privately constructed teleportation array leading to Take in Great Province had long been destroyed. They could not sneak into Take in Great Province unnoticed. They could only use the official teleportation array. And the Tianyi City Lord's cultivation had reached the pinnacle of perfection, yet this came at the critical juncture when the ancient giant catastrophe could descend at any moment. The Grand Libationer of this province would never permit him to leave at such a time. Thus, they could only dispatch the young City Lord, who was the weakest merely at the form stage, to go personally. Moreover, he could not directly teleport to taking Great Province. The Grand Libationer would see through his intentions at a glance and stop him on the spot. The young City Lord must first detour to another Great Province, then use a private teleportation array there to quietly turn back and infiltrate taking Great Province. Then locate Fang Chen's trail and seize an opportunity to strike. The Tianyi City Lord said in a deep voice, "In 2 more days, the provincial teleportation array will be completely shut down. Once you go, you most likely won't be able to return within 2 days, and will inevitably be stranded in Taking Great Province.
You must be extremely careful there. If you truly encounter an ancient giant, immediately reveal your identity and tell them you are one of their own.
Do not let them harm you by mistake. The young city lord nodded vigorously and replied with firm resolution, I understand, father. Just wait quietly for my good news. Western continent.
Upon an immortal mountain that pierced the clouds, standing at its peak, felt as if one could pluck the stars by simply reaching out. Liu Ruyan slowly opened her captivating eyes. The metal mask she had once discarded was once again worn on her face, concealing that world-toppling beauty. Before her, from a jade casket carved with ominous crows, strands of arcane power were slowly being drawn out and flowing into her body. Her meridians were clearly visible on her skin, glowing with a faint blue light. The spiritual energy around her rushed into her like backflow into a bottomless pit, madly converging within. On an ancient tree not far away, the starry mountain lord, with her flowing silver hair, sensing the terrifying fluctuations of spiritual energy, could not help but reveal traces of shock in her eyes. She murmured to herself, no wonder my senior brother, even on his deathbed, kept you firmly in mind and entrusted me to take you into the starry mountain. Your constitution is indeed mysterious enough. Such a speed of absorbing spiritual energy was something she had never even heard of. Moreover, Liu Ruyan's constitution was by no means just about simply absorbing spiritual energy. The Starry Mountain Lord could clearly sense that Liu Ruyan's comprehension was skyrocketing at an astonishing rate. Her physique, her soul, were also growing stronger day by day. Even more, several great Taos that were extremely difficult for ordinary people to comprehend were quietly manifesting within Liu Ruyan, one of which was glaringly the Tao of Time. This was the hardest Tao in the world to comprehend. Even a typical cultivator would never grasp its method in their entire lifetime. The last person to comprehend this Tao was that compassionate sage. If everything went smoothly, Liu Ruyan's future Tao path might not stop at the 5 declines of heaven and man, but instead become a sage. Liu Ruyan stopped her cultivation, and the evil crow jade seal hanging on her chest gently dropped. She extended both hands, cupped the jade seal, and a look of relief appeared in her eyes as she chuckled softly. Thanks to this evil crow jade seal sent by my brother-in-law. Only then could my constitution be fully activated. Brother-in-law. The Starry Mountain Lord was slightly taken aback and couldn't help asking, have you thought it through? Liu Ruyan stood up and nodded gently. Her voice carried a calmness like the aftermath of a tribulation. To move forward, one must first let go of the past. That phoenix crown, I have put it down. That person, I have also let go. Looking at the solitary figure standing alone, thin as paper, a slight sting welled up in the Starry Mountain Lord's heart. To pick up and then let go, it is but a mere thought between. Yet this one thought often means a heart broken to death, all hopes dashed to ashes. That night, alone before that phoenix crown, what heart-trenching pain and struggle had Liu Ruyan gone through, to finally exchange for today's single word, let go. Ruyan, the Starry Mountain Lord's lips trembled slightly, but Liu Ruyan turned her head and smiled faintly at her. Master, I have already decided on my Tao. The Starry Mountain Lord immediately suppressed the grief in her eyes and revealed a joyful expression. The sooner one determines her own Tao, the greater the chance of perfecting the great Tao ahead of time. She quickly asked, which Tao is it? Liu Ruyan beamed and clearly enunciated 4 words, the Tao of Time. Taking Great Province, the Imperial Observatory. The provincial teleportation array leading to Hunyuan Province suddenly blazed with brilliant light. 2 figures walked out slowly from the array's radiance. The man was a youth with red lips and white teeth, handsomely unworldly, a smile playing at the corner of his lips. He said with a clear laugh, Brother Fang's current fame is truly at its zenith. In every province I pass, his great name is heard. Especially in Hunyuan Province and the Great Wilderness Province, they hold him in the highest esteem. He was none other than Fain. And the peerless beauty beside him, with stunning features and a cool, aloof demeanor, was that Asura remnant soul from the heavenly realm Yue. The two had traveled together across the 9 provinces, and this time they finally returned to Taking just before the provincial teleportation arrays closed. Yue parted her vermilion lips slightly, gave a light nod with her snow-white chin, and agreed, he is indeed extraordinary. The first time she saw Fang Chen was at the edge of the continent. At that time, Fang Chen had just experienced a brutal battle with a 2-star giant king and a powerhouse from the young Emperor Mountain. Fang Chen's first impression on her was merely that his resolve was decent. He was not easily ensnared by the sole aura of her bewitching Asura clan. He seemed not the slightest bit enticed by her beauty. But on this journey through the 9 provinces, she discovered that whenever locals learned they were from taking Great Province, their eyes would always light up and ask, Fang Chen. Thus she heard the many shocking tales of Fang Chen storming the heavenly realm twice, and slaughtering half the city of Dharma form experts in Gixu province in a fit of rage. Even she had to admit Fang Chen's extraordinariness. But the next moment, Yue reached out and gently hooked her arm around Feiyan's, her gaze toward him as tender as water. She said softly, but he cannot compare to you. Feiyan smiled slightly, reached out to tap her nose tip, and said, You, my dear, are merely seeing beauty through a lover's eyes. The peerless beauties who adore Brother Fang are beyond count. But the one willing to like a monk like me is only you in the entire world. Yui said no more, merely smiling as she gently rested her head upon his shoulder. Softly, she murmured, I will always be with you.
Forever.
Feiyan tightened his arm around her slender shoulders, and with a hearty voice declared, Let's go. Let us go see Brother Fang. I have brought back something wonderful for him. Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion. When Fang Chen returned, he saw the pavilion master and some disciples carefully arranging 3 ancient formation discs. He recognized these formation discs. They were the precious defensive treasures gifted by several venerables of Great Wilderness Prefecture when they had personally visited the last
time ostensibly to offer condolences.
Each formation disc could withstand a single strike from a deity transformation venerable. If a giant king were to truly assail the Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion's gates, these 3 discs could temporarily block 3 fatal strikes. But then, if it came to that, it would mean the taking Great Prefecture had already suffered utter defeat, powerless to stop the ancient giants from annihilating every sect, large and small. By then, it would surely be a hair's breadth from catastrophe, teetering on the brink of destruction. In his heart, Fang Chen silently prayed, May these formation discs never need to be used.
Uncle, Master.
You're back. Zia Keoj, who was assisting the pavilion master, seemed to sense something. She looked over, and her formerly serene eyes instantly brimmed with joy. Dropping her work, she hurried over, standing radiantly before Fang Chen. Today, she wore an elegant gown of pear, blossom white, embroidered with clouds, accentuating her graceful and beautiful figure. Her jet-black hair cascaded like a waterfall, and her sparkling eyes shone like brilliant gemstones. A faint, delicate fragrance wafted toward him on the gentle breeze. Fang Chen gazed at her, his expression somewhat complex. This girl, as tranquil as water, who only smiled so brilliantly like peach blossoms when she saw him, was actually of a foreign race. How exactly had she come from the heavenly realm to the central plains? And for what purpose had she come? What aim did she harbor by concealing her identity? For a moment, the Zia Keoj before him seemed a little unfamiliar.
Uncle, Master, what's wrong?
Are you injured? Seeing Fang Chen's strange expression, Zia Keoj's smile immediately faded, and she grew extremely anxious with concern. When she herself was hurt, she wouldn't so much as furrow her brows. But if Fang Chen was injured, she simply could not remain calm. Fang Chen reined in his surging thoughts, gazing at her face filled with worry, yet in his mind, moments they had shared flashed unbidden. At last, he sighed, inwardly. Forget it, who she was, what purpose she harbored, none of it mattered. I only needed to know that she is Zia Keoj, the one who has always quietly cared for me from behind. That is enough. Fang Chen shook his head, a faint smile appearing. It's nothing. I was very successful. Zia Keoj refused to believe it, her willow leaf brows slightly furrowing as she pressed. Then why were you staring at me blankly just now? Fang Chen chuckled softly, his tone carrying a rare hint of teasing. It's been a while since I saw you. I wanted to gaze at you a little longer. Is that not allowed?
Wow.
Zia Keoj flushed with embarrassment and hurriedly glanced left and right, a pair of intoxicating blushes swiftly rising on her jade-like face. It was the first time Fang Chen had ever spoken to her with such affectionate undertones. It left her feeling both bashful and unable to suppress her joy. Her tender heart pounded like a startled fawn, her thoughts racing uncontrollably as she secretly wondered whether his words carried some deeper meaning. At that moment, Fang Chen took out the Earth-Tooth sword and handed it to her. This is a peerless spirit sword my godmother gave me. It is called the Earth-Tooth sword. Now I'm lending it to you for self-defense. For his great Yan sword formation to achieve full mastery, he needed to gather 6 peerless spirit swords. Fang Chen calculated inwardly. At present, he had only 5 spirit swords in total. The Earth-Tooth sword and the Evil sword were just sitting idle, so it was better to lend one to Xiakeoj, granting her added means to slay enemies in the war against the ancient giants. Hearing this, Xiakeoj was momentarily stunned. Ripples stirred in her heart. This sword was personally given by his godmother. It was a memento from Fang Chen's kin. By all logic, even if he were to pass it on, shouldn't it go to a future daughter-in-law like Fairy Yunsheng or Liu Qingxian? Why would he think of her? Xiakeoj's pretty face instantly reddened even more. Her almond-shaped eyes stared blankly at the Earth-Tooth sword held before her, and for a long moment she dared not reach out to take it. Fang Chen was inwardly puzzled, thinking, I'm just lending her a sword, why is her face turning red instead? Had some word of mine been inappropriate, causing her to misunderstand? He tentatively spoke, Keoj, if you don't want this sword, I'll give you something else. As he spoke, he made as if to withdraw it. Seeing this, Xiakeoj hurriedly snatched the sword. She bashfully turned her face away, her gaze drifting elsewhere, not daring to meet Fang Chen's eyes. She stammered urgently, yes, of course I want it. Thank you, Uncle Master. I'll go help the Pavilion Master set up the formation discs now. Before the words were even finished, she turned and fled, as if escaping, leaving Fang Chen standing alone in place, utterly bewildered. Liu Qingxian had watched the entire scene. She gave a soft snort, rolled her eyes lightly at Fang Chen, and said mockingly, heh, daring to accept a peerless spirit sword. If Liu Ruxu were to find out, she'd likely be so frightened she'd give it back. Fang Chen couldn't help but laugh at this. He naturally knew what Liu Qingxian was referring to. It was that day at the foot of Boundary Mountain, when he was distributing the bod, high seeds to everyone. Liu Ruxu had suddenly materialized out of thin air, scaring the guilty Xiakeoj so much that she hastily and obediently returned the bod, high seed she had received. Now, watching Liu Qingxian approach gracefully, Fang Chen did not hesitate. He directly brought out the Azure Frost sword. As the inheritor of the mysterious elder's sword arts, Liu Qingxian similarly urgently needed a suitable, excellent sword. And Fang Chen himself only needed to keep the listening snow, purple and evil swords to form the Great Yan sword formation for slaying powerful foes. He extended the sword, speaking crisply, lend you this one. Liu Qingxian grabbed the Azure Frost sword, and only then did she beam with delight, giggling, now that's more like it. You gave a sword to your martial niece, but you nearly left me out. If you had, I'd have had to complain to Liu Ruxu about this. Hearing this, Fang Chen couldn't help but smile. He understood in his heart that only Liu Qingxian had the audacity to be so direct with him. Gazing at the lovely lady in the purple dress before him, he stepped forward silently, wrapped his arm around her slender waist, and brought his lips close to her ear, softly admonishing, on the battlefield, be sure to take good care of yourself.